Hello and welcome guys to Reception. Today we begin with the chapter Water Resources of ICSE Class 10 Geography. Now the full chapter of water resources will be covered in two videos. This video is the first part. So watch this video till the end, and if you like it, do hit the thumbs up button, share this video with your friends and subscribe to Eduception. Without further ado, let's begin. Jal hi jeevan hai. We all know that water is the most important thing for life. Now the first thing that we need to study in this particular chapter is sources of water, and there are two most important sources of water, which are surface water and ground water. Surface water. The water available on the surface of earth in the form of rivers, lakes and ponds is surface water. Most of the rainfall received is present in the form of surface water. The three main rivers, Ganga, Indus and Brahmaputra, supply about 60% surface water in India. So what is surface water? The water that we find on the surface of the earth is called surface water. This is available in the forms of river, lakes, ponds, tanks, etc. So this is surface water. Now the three major rivers of India, Ganga, Indus and Brahmaputra, supply about 60% surface water in India. That is why we say that Ganga, Indus and Brahmaputra are very important for India. Then we have groundwater. The water which is present below the earth's surface is groundwater. The main source of groundwater is the rainfall that seeps through the surface into the ground. The distribution of groundwater is very uneven in India, and 60% of groundwater is used for agriculture. Now groundwater is very important in India. What is groundwater? The water which is present beneath the earth's surface is groundwater. Now what happens is rainfall occurs, and that rainwater seeps through the surface of earth into the ground, hence forming groundwater. Now groundwater is very important, as it is stated over here that 60% of groundwater is used for agriculture, and we know for agriculture water is the most important thing. But the distribution of groundwater is very uneven in India. So guys, these are the two sources of water, surface water and groundwater. Both these are very important and questions are asked from both these. So try to understand both of them very properly. Now guys, we'll move on to the next thing, which is irrigation in India. Moving on to irrigation in India. First let me tell you what irrigation means. The process of supplying water to crops by artificial means like canals, wells, tanks and etc. is called irrigation. Very simple. Now, why is irrigation so important in India, and why do we need irrigation? The first thing is, India is an agricultural country, and water is the only means through which full potential of the agricultural sector can be realized. Now we all know that India is an agricultural country, and for agriculture the most important thing is water. So that is why we need irrigation. Okay? Water is the only means through which full potential of the agricultural sector can be realized. That is why irrigation is so important in India. Moving on. The southwest monsoon, which supplies 90% of rainfall in India, is very unreliable and often fails to keep its date. Hence irrigation is required to supply water to the crops. Now in the climate video, if you haven't watched the climate video, do watch it. The link to that video will be in your top right corner. In the climate video, I told you that it is very important for India that the southwest monsoon hits India during the first week of June. But the southwest monsoon often fails to keep its date, and it is very unreliable. Hence, irrigation is required to supply water to the crops, because crops won't wait for anyone. Water supplying is very necessary. Hence, irrigation is required to supply water to the crops. Then, the variation of rainfall is very uneven in India and is restricted from June to September. Now, the rainfall in India is very uneven. Rajasthan receives less than 25 centimeter of rainfall every year, but Moisinram receives more than 1000 centimeter of rainfall every year. Hence, the rainfall is very uneven in India. Say, in places where the rainfall is very less, irrigation is very important for agriculture. Then the rainfall is restricted from June to September in India. So majority of India receives rainfall during the months of June to September. So during the rest of the year, irrigation becomes very important for agriculture. Then during the winter, rainfall is only received in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Punjab, Haryana. For the rest of the country, Rabi crops need artificial irrigation. As I told you, majority of India receives rainfall during the month of June to September. In the winter months, only the states of Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Punjab and Haryana receive rainfall. For the rest of the country, all the Rabi crops, that means the crops which are grown in winter, need artificial irrigation. Okay guys, so these were the most important points on why we need irrigation in India. There are many other points in your books, but I have mentioned all the important points over here. You can study those points in your book also. Moving on, means of irrigation in India. Now we will have to study 4 means of irrigation in India, which are canal irrigation, tank irrigation, well irrigation and modern methods of irrigation. What we will do is, we will study all the means of irrigation in India one by one and discuss all the features. Let's begin with canal irrigation. Now I hope you guys know what canals are. Small streams are cut from rivers and those streams are used to transfer water. Those streams are called canals. Canal irrigation amounts to about 40% of the total irrigated area in India. Now this will tell you that canal irrigation is very important in India. Now, what are the conditions required for digging canals? First of all, flat land is required. Why? Now imagine we have a land like this. First of all, digging a canal in such a land is almost impossible. Even if the canal is dug, water flowing like this is almost impossible because the flow of water in canals is not that great. Hence, flat land like this is required. So the digging is also easy and water can also easily flow. Then soft surface with deep soil is required. Now soft surface is required to dig canals because imagine if the surface is rocky, it will become very difficult to dig canals. So soft land is required to dig canals. Then we have perennial source of water. Now for canals, perennial source of waters are very important. If the source of water is not perennial, the canal will be dry in almost all the time of the year other than the rainy season. Then irrigation by canals in North India is more suitable than South India. There are a few reasons for that. Let's go through them. The first one is the rivers of the northern plains are perennial as they are snow fed, whereas rivers in South India are seasonal. As I told you, canals need a perennial source of water and the rivers in North India are perennial. That means water is available all throughout the year. Why? Because the rivers are snow fed. So that is why canals in North India is more better. Then the surface of northern plains is flat and soft, whereas it is rocky in the south. Now I explained you this also. The land in northern plains is flat and soft, hence digging the canal is very easy and the water can also flow easily, but it is very rocky in the south. So that is why in the south canals are not easily dug. Then the demand for irrigation is greater in northern India. This is very simple. Where there is more demand for irrigation, there will be more supply of irrigation. Hence canals are more suited to northern India. So these are the 3 main reasons. Now guys, there are 2 types of canals in India. Types of canals in India, they are inundation canal and perennial canal. What we will do is, we will study both these canals separately. Okay? The 2 types of canals in India, inundation canal and perennial canal. Let's begin with inundation canal. These canals are taken out from rivers without any regulating system. Generally, these canals are taken out from the rivers when they are in flood and excess of water. Hence, these are dependent on rain. Now, during the rainfall season, if a river gets flooded, inundation canal is taken out from that river. So what it does is, first of all, it controls the flood of that river and it takes the flood water to such a place where water is very less. तो इनंडेशन कैनल क्या होता है? बारिश के मौसम में जब किसी नदी में फ्लड आ जाता है तो उसमें से इनंडेशन कैनल निकाल दिया जाता है. तो वो इनंडेशन कैनल क्या करता है? पहले तो वो फ्लड को कंट्रोल करता है उस रिवर में, और वो उस जगह पानी लेके चला जाता है जहां पानी की कमी होती है. तो दिस इज इनंडेशन कैनल. व्हाट आर द एडवांटेजेस? फर्स्ट, इट इज वेरी इजी एंड चीप टू बिल्ड. So it is very simple to build and it is also very cheap. Then it is very useful in controlling floods. Like I told you, if it is taken out during the rainfall season when the flood is very high, it will be very helpful to control floods. Then the disadvantages. Number one, very uncertain water supply. Now, if it is taken out during the rainfall season when there are floods, if the rainfall is very less, there will be no water in inundation canal. Hence, the water supply is very uncertain and it depends on rainfall. It is also written over there that these are dependent on rain. Hence, the water supply is very uncertain. Then, it is useful only during floods in lowland areas. Now we know that floods occur in lowland areas. So, inundation canal is only useful in lowland areas, that too during the flooding season. So guys, that was all regarding inundation canals. Now we'll move on to perennial canals. Perennial canal. These canals that draw water from perennial rivers, perennial lakes are perennial canals. These canals are useful throughout the year as water is present throughout the year. Now in perennial canals, water is present all throughout the year. Why? Because perennial canals take water from perennial rivers and perennial lakes. So water is present all throughout the year. So this is perennial canal. Then what are the advantages of perennial canal? First, as these canals serve throughout the year, the irrigated area are less dependent on rainfall. Now as I told you that in perennial canals water is present all throughout the year. So the areas which are irrigated by perennial canals, those areas become very less dependent on rainfall. The second one, as these canals supply water during hot seasons, crop can be grown easily. Again the same thing, perennial canals supply water all throughout the year. Hence during the hot seasons also water is supplied, so crops can be grown easily. What are the disadvantages? The first one, there is a risk of overflooding. Now first thing, perennial canals carry water all throughout the year. If the rainfall is very high, then perennial canals get overflooded, hence causing destruction to crops. The second one, it is very expensive to build properly. Now perennial canals need to be built very properly and they need to be lined. Okay, so it is very expensive to build properly. Then we have problem of water logging in case of unlined canals. Now if perennial canals are not built properly and if unlined canals are built, there will be a problem of water logging, hence causing destruction to the crops. So guys, that was all regarding perennial canal. Now inundation canal, perennial canal and all the things over here are very important. So try to understand everything and try to memorize everything. Now what are the areas where canals are found in India? They are Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal. So basically the north part of India or the northern plains. So guys, that was all regarding canal irrigation. Now we'll move on to the next, irrigation. Moving on to tank irrigation. Tank is an artificial construction of earthen embankments or walls in the area of natural depressions to collect water. The source of water for tanks is rainfall. So how are tanks constructed? Say there is a natural depression like this. Over this natural depression, embankment or walls are constructed like this, and hence a tank is created and water is stored in these tanks. The main source of water for these tanks are rainfall. Okay, in India around 12% of the total irrigated area is done by tanks, and this 12% is mostly in peninsular India. So tanks are mostly used in peninsular India. There are many reasons for this. Let's check them out. First one, most of the area is uneven with many natural depressions where tank can be built. Now the land of peninsular India is uneven and there are a lot of natural depressions. Hence, tanks can be easily built. The second one, the Deccan Plateau consists of underlying hard rocks that do not allow water to seep. Now, water is stored in this tank. The surface below it contains hard rocks that do not allow water to seep. So, water will be stored over there, water will not go inside the ground. Okay? Then, the amount of rainfall received in peninsular India is good. As I told you, the source of water for tanks is rainfall. So, if the amount of rainfall is good, then tanks will carry good amount of water, as simple as that. So now, we will check out the advantages and disadvantages of tank irrigation. First, the advantages. First one, it is very cheap to build. Now, you just need a natural depression and you need a little bit of bricks and you can create a tank. So it is very cheap and simple to build. Then, tanks are easily built in peninsular India where building canals is not possible. Now, for canal irrigation, I told you we need soft and flat land. In peninsular India, we do not have soft and flat land. Okay? So building tanks is easy in peninsular India as compared to building canals. Then, in the absence of perennial rivers, tanks provide a source of water during the dry season. Now, in tanks, water is stored during the rainfall season and this water is used during the dry season. Then, water is used for domestic purpose. Other than agriculture, the water stored in tanks is also used for domestic purposes. Then, the disadvantages. First one, large amount of water is wasted through evaporation. Now, we need large natural depressions to create tanks to make them successful. And if the surface is large, then there will be a lot of evaporation. So that is a disadvantage. Then, tanks occupy a large area of land which could be used for agriculture. As I told you, we need a large area for land to create tanks and that area could have been used for agriculture. So these are the disadvantages of tank irrigation. Then what are the areas where tank irrigation is mostly found? The area is mostly peninsular India and the states are Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Okay guys, so this was all regarding tank irrigation. Everything is important over here. So try to understand everything and try to memorize everything. Now we'll move on to the next, irrigation. Moving on to well irrigation. There are two types of wells that we will have to study, which are surface well and tube well. We will start with surface well. Now I hope all of you know what surface well is. Surface well का मतलब कुआं, और कुआं क्या होता है सबको पता होना चाहिए. Surface well, also called ordinary well. A small hole dug on the surface of the earth to obtain water from the subsoil is a surface well. So it is simply written what a surface well means. It is nothing but a simple hole which is dug on the earth's surface to obtain water from the subsoil. Then, wells are the most accessible form of irrigation for farmers. They are very cheap to construct and easy to maintain. Now, wells are very easy to construct and they are cheap and they are also very easy to maintain. Hence, wells are the most accessible form of irrigation for farmers in India. Then, surface wells may be lined or unlined. Now, lined well means pakka well and unlined well means kacha well. Lined well, that is pakka well, is constructed with the help of bricks and cement and it is a little deep. Unlined well, that is kacha well. No use of bricks or cement is done in the construction of unlined well. Unlined well is a little less deep as compared to lined well. Hence, lined well is a little expensive and unlined well is cheap. Then, what are the suitable conditions for wells? First, the water table should be high. Now, if we are digging a hole into the ground to obtain water, if the water table is high, it will be very easy to obtain water. If the water table is low, it will be very difficult to obtain water. So, a high water table is required. Then, the land should be soft. Now, if the land is soft, then digging of the surface well is easy. If the land is hard, then the digging will be very difficult. So, the land should be soft. So these were the conditions. Then what are the advantages of surface well? First of all, surface well is the simplest and cheapest source of irrigation. As I told you, construction of a surface well is simple, it is cheap, and the maintenance is also very easy. Hence, surface well is the simplest and cheapest source of irrigation. Then number 2, well is an independent source of irrigation and can be used when the necessity arises. Now take for example canals. If a farmer requires water, then going every time to the canal is almost impossible. So wells are highly accessible and can be used when the necessity arises, and also it is an independent source of irrigation. Then wells can be dug at any convenient place. Now to dig a well, just find a convenient place and wells can be dug. For canals, first of all you need a river, then you need a lot of conditions to be satisfied, then the canals can be constructed. But for wells, you just have to find a convenient place and wells can be dug easily. What are the disadvantages of surface well? First, surface wells are not deep enough, so they may dry during the summer. Now as I told you, water is obtained from the subsoil. During the summer season, the water of the subsoil may get dried up, hence the wells do get dried during the summer season as they are not deep enough. Then, only a small portion of land can be irrigated. Now how much water can a surface well supply? A very less amount of water. So that less amount of water can only irrigate a small portion of land. Then sometimes the water may be brackish, that is salty, which is unsuitable for irrigation and drinking. Now for example, if you dig a well and the water comes out to be brackish, that means salty, the well will become unusable because brackish water cannot be used for drinking and it cannot be used for agriculture. Okay, so these were the disadvantages. Now what are the areas where surface well are generally found? Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Punjab, Haryana and Madhya Pradesh. So basically the northern part of India and the northern plains where the water table is high and the land is soft. So guys, this was all regarding surface well. Everything is very important over here, so try to understand everything and try to memorize everything. Now we will move on to tube well. Moving on to tube well. A tube well is a bore well which is dug deep in the ground with the help of a drilling machine to obtain water from the groundwater. The water is pumped out manually with the help of electricity. Now what is a tube well? In surface well, a simple hole is dug on the earth's surface to obtain water from the subsoil. In tube well, a much deeper hole is dug so that water can be obtained from groundwater. Let me tell you, say this is the surface and groundwater is over here. Tube well is nothing but a simple tube which is dug into the ground so that water can be obtained from this ground water. Okay, now the water can be obtained manually, जैसे चापाकल होता है, that's manual, or a pump can be placed and electricity can be used to obtain water. Okay, so this is what a tube well is. Then what are the necessary conditions for a tube well? First of all, the water table should be high with perennial water supply. Now as I told you, the water is obtained from the groundwater. If the level of groundwater is high, it will be easy to obtain water. If the level of groundwater is low, it will be difficult to obtain water. As you can see over here, the groundwater is over here, so the length of the tube is this. Say the groundwater would have been over here, the length of the tube would have to be very long and the digging would have to be made very deep. Then the ground should be soft. Now if the ground is soft, the digging is easy. If the ground is hard, then the digging will be very difficult. So soft ground is required. Then cheap and uninterrupted electricity is required. Now if we have a pump over here, to run the pump we need electricity. So electricity is required, which has to be cheap and uninterrupted. Then the area must receive adequate rainfall. So this is the same thing as the water table should be high. If the area receives adequate rainfall, then the rain will go inside the ground and the groundwater will remain high. Okay, so adequate rainfall is required. So these were the conditions. What are the advantages? First, very useful during drought season when surface wells dry up. Now this is the tube well. Say a surface well goes over here only to obtain water from the subsoil. Now, tube well goes much deeper and obtains water from the groundwater. During drought season, most of the surface wells get dried up, but tube well do not get dry. So it is very useful during the drought season when surface wells dry up. Then a large area of land can be irrigated. Now it is simple concept. If you take water from the groundwater and if you are using a pump, then a large amount of water can be received. And if a large amount of water is received, then a large area of land can be irrigated. Very simple. Then what are the disadvantages of a tube well? First, tube wells are expensive and money has to be spent for electricity. Now if you want to dig a very deep hole, you require a lot of money. Then you require money for the pump. Then you require money for the electricity. Hence, tube wells are very expensive. Then, tube wells cannot be used in areas of brackish groundwater. As I told you, if the groundwater is brackish, that means salty, then the water will be of no use. It cannot be used for drinking, it cannot be used for agriculture. So, tube wells cannot be used in the area of brackish groundwater. That is salty groundwater. Then, as tube wells draw large quantity of water, the water table gets depleted. Now this is a very big problem that we are facing in India right now. A lot of us use tube wells not only for irrigation for agriculture, for domestic purposes also. So what is happening is the water table is getting depleted in many of the areas. Tube wells draw up a large amount of water. So the water table is getting depleted very fast in India. So this is a very big condition that India has to overcome. Then, so guys, these were the disadvantages. Now, what are the areas where tube wells are generally found? Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and West Bengal. So these are the states where tube wells are generally found. So guys, all this was regarding tube wells. Everything is very important over here. So try to understand everything and try to memorize everything. Now we will move on to the next method, which is modern method of irrigation. Moving on to modern methods of irrigation. Until now we have studied about canal irrigation, tank irrigation and well irrigation. Those methods of irrigation are traditional methods of irrigation. Now we will study about modern methods of irrigation. That means the methods of irrigation that have been developed in the past few decades. First, why modern methods of irrigation are so important? There are few reasons for this. Let's check them out. First one, the wastage of water is very less, hence water is conserved. Now, in modern methods of irrigation, water required is very less, hence there is very low wastage of water and hence water is conserved. Then, large areas of land can be irrigated evenly. Now, when we use modern methods of irrigation, large areas of land can be irrigated evenly. That means there is no uneven irrigation of land, which basically means that there will be no area where the irrigation is high and there will be no area where the irrigation is low. The complete land will be irrigated evenly. Then, it helps in the conservation of soil. Let me tell you, in canal irrigation, during the rainfall season, most of the canals get flooded. And we know because of flood, soil erosion takes place. But over here, in modern methods of irrigation, less amount of water is used, hence there is no soil erosion, hence it helps in the conservation of soil. Now we will move on to types of modern methods of irrigation. There are two most important types, which are sprinkler irrigation and drip irrigation. First we will study about sprinkler irrigation. So sprinkler irrigation. In this type of irrigation, sprinklers are set up in the fields and supplied with water by pipes. This type of irrigation requires less amount of water and there is no loss of water. It is very useful for sandy soil, that is in arid and semi-arid regions. Now let me explain it to you. Say this is a farm. Okay. Now for sprinkler irrigation, pipes are set up like this. Okay, and sprinklers are set up, say over here one, over here one, over here one over here, one over here, one over here, one over here and one over here. Now these sprinklers sprinkle water all over the land. Okay, so there is even irrigation all throughout the land and the wastage of water is very less. the sprinkler looks something like this. Okay, water is sprinkled through here and it turns, so water is sprinkled all around the ground. So this was all regarding sprinkler irrigation. Now it is very useful for sandy soil, that is in arid and semi-arid region. First of all, the water utilized is very less, and secondly, it can help with even irrigation of the land. That is why it is so useful in sandy soil, that is arid and semi-arid region. Then the second one is drip irrigation. In drip irrigation, water is taken directly to the roots of the crops. Narrow pipes with small holes are laid on the fields which drip water to the roots of the crops. There is no wastage of water and the crop yield is good. Now in drip irrigation, what happens is there is a dripper which is set up in each and every root of the crops. The dripper drips water directly to the roots of the crops so that the water is taken by the crops. Okay, and hence over here also the wastage of water is very less. There is negligible wastage of water because all the water is dripped directly to the root of the crops, and we all know that water is absorbed by plants by roots. So there is no wastage of water over here. So guys, this was all regarding modern methods of irrigation. This and this, that means everything over here is very important. So try to understand everything and try to memorize everything. Now guys, with the end of modern methods of irrigation, what I'll do is I'll end this video over here. The remaining portion of this chapter, that means water conservation, the need of water conservation and rainwater harvesting, will be covered in the next part. So guys, do watch the next part. Until then, this is Rishi on behalf of Inundation signing off, and guys, take care.